Hello friends and fashion lovers, welcome back. Thank you for clicking on this video. In this video I'll be showing you how to make a basic dress pattern which can be transformed into any dress of your choice. To make this basic dress pattern, the measurements you'll be needing are displayed on the screen, so do well to take those measurements. I want you to also note that I will be drafting in centimeters, so depending on how tight or how loose you like to take your measurements, that is all up to you. But for this pattern, I will be using 4 centimeters of wearing ease. Our wearing ease allocation is going to be 1 centimeter for the back, because you would agree with me that from the waist upward, the back is more flat compared to the front. So for the front, we are allocating 3 centimeters of ease to the bust and the waistline. But when it comes to the hips, we are allocating 3 centimeters of ease to the hip area for the back, while 1 centimeter of ease to the hip area in front. That being said, I will be drafting a half scale pattern. It means that this allocation will be divided into 2. That is for the half scale. It means that where I have 1 centimeter, I'm going to be using half centimeter. Where I have 3 centimeters, I'm going to be using 1.5 centimeters. I just hope you will understand as we go along. I'll be using my pattern paper, my rulers, whatever will help you with the curve, a straight one, and I'll be using marker for visibility, but normally I use pencils to draft my pattern because of the precise nature of it, and of course I'll be using a tape rule as well. So let's get started with the drafting. So I'm going to start by drawing a right angle. You would notice that I am using a marker by the side, while on top I will be using a pencil. That is because the upper part is subject to change. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my back length measurement. So you want to place the tape at your shoulder and take the measurement to your waistline at the back. So now I am going to go ahead and put quarter of my round bust measurement plus ease. So remember that for the back I'm using a 0.5 centimeter of ease. That's 5 millimeters of ease for the back, because the total ease allocation for the back is 1 centimeter. So this is just the box that will be a guide to other measurements that we'll be using for this pattern. Next, I'm marking 1/6 of my round neck measurement. You can divide your neck width into 3 and use 1/3 of that to go up, or you just use 2 centimeters to go up. So meaning from the shoulder line, go up by 2 centimeters. This will be your new shoulder line for the back. It just helps the garment sit nicely when you do this adjustment. So now I'm going to connect back to the initial point, and that will be 2 centimeters deep for my back neck depth. So I'm going to go ahead and mark my armhole depth. So the formula for the armhole depth that I use that work for me, it's displayed on the screen. So you can do well to use this formula, or you measure it. So that is my armhole depth. Mine is 23 centimeters. So now I'm going to put half of my shoulder width measurement. That's half of my back width measurement. And I'm marking the same at the chest line, which is my armhole line. So I'm using pencil right here because it's subject to change. So now it's time for me to go ahead and mark my shoulder slope. The formula I use most time for the shoulder slope is 10% of the back length. So your back length divided by 10, whatever you have. Please note the placement where I place my marking. So I place it not exactly at my shoulder point, but I'm going to link it up to the neckline, and that will give me my shoulder slope. So now that I've gotten the shoulder slope, if you come to the shoulder point to measure, you're going to have about 2.5 or so centimeters. That's about 1 inch. Now to connect my armhole, I'm going to go ahead and find the midpoint of this chest line or this armhole line, and I'm going to go in by half a centimeter. So go in by half centimeter. So now I'm going to go ahead and measure this armhole extension that extends to the round bust measurements. So you want to measure that, note it, and you mark it along this armhole line and add half a centimeter to it. So I'm going to also find the midpoint, so that's like a 45-degree angle. But you can just skip all this and connect to form your armhole. But if you want to be precise about your pattern drafting, this is just the way to go when it comes to your armhole. Now go ahead and mark half the armhole extension plus 2 millimeters right there. And with this, you can go ahead and connect to form your armhole. If you feel all the steps that I took is too much for you to handle, you could skip that and just make sure that after going in at the midpoint of the armhole, you just use your curve ruler to connect to form your armhole. On the waistline, I'm going to mark quarter of the round waist measurement plus 0.5 centimeter of ease. Remember that the ease that we are using for the back is 0.5 centimeters. After marking, I am going to check what is left, and I'm going to use that to allocate my dart. I have about 3 centimeters left, so I'm going to give the side seam 1 centimeter, while the rest will be for my darts. So to mark my darts, I am using my bust span measurement at the back. You can also have your waist measurement at the back, but I'm using my bust span measurement at the back. To mark my darts, I'm using half my bust span measurement. So remember that I gave 1 centimeter to the side, so I'm left with 2 centimeters. So now to the 2 centimeters, I'm going to mark 1 centimeter on either side of this line. With that, I'm going to connect to form a dart. This dart is called a designer's dart. So basically for people that make pattern, they just make their dart long enough so they can manipulate it. But for dressmaker, you want to do well to come down about 2.5 centimeters, which is about 1 inch, and create your own dart. So I'm just marking that out about 2.5 centimeters away from my initial dart point, and that will be my new dart for my dress. When I'm making dress, is the second dart that I'm stitching. And to the side, I am going to connect it to the bust line, using that my 1 centimeter. At that my 1 centimeter mark is where I'm connecting to the chest line. Next is for me to mark my hip length measurement. So on the hip line, I am marking quarter of the round hip measurement and 1.5 centimeters for my ease. Remember that I had been using 0.5 centimeters of ease on the waist and the bust line, but for the hip area of the back, I'm using a 1.5 centimeter for my ease because of the butt. With that, I'm just basically going to just connect and blend the waist area as well. So next is for me to mark my dart. When it comes to that, it is subject to change depending on the garment you're making. So this is for my back dress block. So now that I have my back dress block ready, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. Please note that this is center back. It could either be cut on fold or a zipper could be attached to it. So now that I'm done with the back pattern, it's time to draft the front. So let's get drafting. I'm going to start by drawing a 90 degrees angle like I did for the back. So I'm marking quarter of the bust measurement plus 1.5 centimeters of ease right here. So I'm going to mark neck width measurement. So the neck width I'm using is the same as the back. That's 1/6 of the neck round. So basically you can just place the back and trace the neck width and the shoulder slope because that is what you would need. But let's just refresh our memory when it comes to those. So next is for me to mark the same neck width I'm using as neck depth. But this time I am adding 2 centimeters to it. So I'm marking 1/6 of the neck round plus 2 centimeters. At this point, you can just use your curved ruler and connect to form the neckline. But if you just want everything to be precise at all times, like if you're making multiple patterns and you want to have the same template, do well to divide the neck width into 2 and mark it along here and connect. That will be the new neckline. This neckline is subject to change depending on the garment. Moving on, I'm marking half the back width measurement, that's half the shoulder width measurement minus 5 millimeters, that's minus half a centimeter. And I'm taking that measurement and marking it a little bit down so I could make a straight line. So I'm using a pencil as well to make the straight line. I hope it's a bit visible for you to see. So to find the shoulder slope like we did for the back, it's just 1/10 of the back length measurement. That's why I said you can as well place your back pattern and copy out that shoulder slope and the neck width because it's basically the same. So if you're like me that refuse to copy it out, do well to measure this shoulder and make sure that you have the same there. It's going to go out of the line, but it's totally fine. It's totally fine. Just make sure that you have the same as you have for the back in front. So next is to mark the armhole or the chest line. So like you did for the back, before you raise it, do same for the front. But in case you are placing the back pattern on the front, know that the back is higher than the front, so you have to take that into account as well. So now that I have this, it's time to make the armhole. So firstly, I'm going to find the midpoint of this my armhole line, and then I'm going in by 1 centimeter. So make sure you're going in by 1 centimeter. And then I'm going to go ahead and connect it like so. But just because I just want it to be more precise, so I'm going to measure my armhole extension right here. Measuring your armhole extension, you need to note it. Then I'm going to go ahead and divide that my armhole extension into 3. Please note that this part is optional. So now that I've divided it into 3, I've noted the number. Then I'm going to find the midpoint, that's the 45 degrees right there, and I'm going to draw this line out. I'm just extending the line out. Then I'm going to mark 1/3 of that my arm extension right here. So mark 1/3 of your armhole extension plus 3 millimeters. So do well to mark 1/3 of your armhole extension plus 3 millimeters right there. Next, you have your armhole extension because you're marking it up here, and you're going to add 5 millimeters to that. That's half centimeters to that. With all your markings in place, do well to connect the points. Your points might not connect smoothly at once, but do well to take it 3 at a time. So already we have our bust line already, or the bust measurements. So now it's time for us to mark our bust dart width. How do you know your bust dart width? The bust dart width is basically the difference between your back and front waist length. So place a tape from your shoulder to your waist in the back. Take note of it and do same for the front. So whatever difference you have, that is your bust dart width. But you can also say technically that is the apex circle radius divided by 2. What is apex circle radius? Apex circle radius is measured directly from the body. By placing a tape, you already know your apex, that is from the shoulder to your nipple. That is your apex. So if you place a tape from your nipple and measure to the base of your breast, that is the radius. And it's very handy when we are making bustier, corset, and the rest. So if you divide this apex circle radius into 2, that will give you your bust dart width. There is a formula for finding this apex circle radius, but most times it doesn't work for all sizes because the body are different. You can see a plus size lady with a very small breasts or a very slim lady with a bigger bust size. So this formula is not guaranteed for everyone. So I would encourage you to measure it out. But if you think you're somewhat proportional, do well to use the formula of 10% of your bust round as your bust apex circle radius. So what do I mean? If your bust round is 94 centimeters, your apex circle radius will be 9.4 centimeters. And if you divide your bust apex circle radius by 2, you will have your bust dart width. I just hope I've not succeeded in confusing you. Just pause the video and look at the little write-up. I hope it will be of help. Assuming you have marked your bust dart width, it's time to mark the side. So whatever side measurement you had for your back, measure that out and mark it for the front. So please note where I place my tape is after my bust dart width that I place my tape to mark for my side. So with that, just take that measurement and scale across. And this will be your waistline right here. Now it's time to mark the bust span measurement. So whatever you have as your bust span or your nipple separation measurement, divide that into 2 and mark it right here. So just measure from your nipple to your nipple, divide it into 2 and mark it here. So it's time to mark your apex point. So most times it's about 4 centimeters from the chest line for most people. I'm not saying all, but just mark it. Place your tape from the shoulder and get that point. And I'm squaring a line to the side, which will form my side that's much later. So on the waistline, I am putting 1/4 of the waist measurement plus 1.5 centimeters ease. a quarter of the round waist measurement plus 1.5 centimeters ease, and I'm going ahead to note what I have by the side. So I have about 4 centimeters by the side. So I'm going to give 1 centimeter for the side contour, while 3 centimeter will be shared as my dart. That's 1.5 centimeter on either side of this line. And now I'm going to go ahead from that my new 1 centimeter, that is now my side. So I'm connecting it to the chest line while I also connect my darts. So I'm going to be using pencil to connect this first leg of darts. That is because it's the designer's dart. It gets to the bust point. Trust me, it doesn't look flattering if you stitch your darts to the bust point. You allow your darts to get to the bust point for easy manipulation. The dressmaker's darts start about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters away from the bust point. 2.5 centimeters away from the bust point. That is the location of the dart you stitch. Now go ahead and mark from the waist to the hip line. It's the same as the back. On the hip line, go ahead and mark quarter of the round hip measurement with half centimeters ease. So half centimeters ease is what we are using for the front hip. When you're done marking it, do well to blend it out nicely. Don't forget to blend the waistline as well. So for the front darts, I'm using 12 centimeters, which will be subject to change later. You can extend this into a full dress, whatever length you choose. Just do well to extend your pattern to that length. So now to the bust dart or the side dart. You already know your dart width. So I'd already marked mine here. So I'm going to pick that up and divide it into 2. Place it, and you're connecting it to the bust point or the apex. So once again, don't forget that a dressmaker and a designer's dart is different. A designer's dart gets to the apex point, while the dressmaker's dart starts about 2.5 centimeters away from the apex point. So with this, I'm just going to blend the side of my dart and just make sure that while I cut it out, I'm not running short. So if you close the side dart like I've closed, it should be able to match the side of the back nicely. So if you have watched to this point, thank you for watching. Don't forget to draft your pattern, because we'll be doing a lot of sewing tutorial using patterns. See you in the next tutorial, and bye for now.